Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all waking up to a great morning. And I wanted to go ahead and talk about this. This was made to me just now. Ringside News posted a very interesting article pertaining to one Bret Hart and how he's being urged to basically let go of his consumed hatred of Bill Goldberg. Ringside News is the source. The link will be in the comments section down below. And it basically states that Bret Hart had suffered post-concussion syndrome, which forced him to retire from the ring. And Bret Hart would go on record and say Goldberg's work rate was 0 out of 10%. And it states here, while speaking on the keeping it 100%, former WCW star Conan talked about working with Bill Goldberg in WCW and also Bret Hart's hatred of Bill Goldberg. Basically says, how could you? The match was 30 seconds long. He never hurt me, but he was a little bit of clumsy because he was new and he hadn't really been trained and had a great era. And WCW were going to take advantage of it, much like when I started. And he basically says, so one guy is mad, that being Bret Hart, that he can't do what he loves, and the guy that was never trained and probably didn't love it like him was the guy that hurt him, but you need to let it go, bro, because it'll consume you. And he has a point, because when we look at Bret Hart, we know he has been very vocal about Bill Goldberg for many, many years. The kick to the head that we know that got Bret Hart's career taken away. We know about his bitterness towards WCW. And yes, at the time, a lot of us felt bad for Bret Hart. He was going through a lot of stuff. He had the Montreal screw job that forced him out of WWE. He lost his brother Owen. He had a divorce. WCW was not really utilizing him the way they could have when he came in. And then they get kicked in the head by Bill Goldberg. His career all of a sudden is potentially stopped. And it was never really the same with him ever again. Now, was Bret Hart in the wrong for being vocal about the whole thing? I honestly don't think he was. But I do think that Bret Hart needs to look at it differently. Let's say the kick to the head never happened. Let's say that whole thing never happened. WCW still would have closed its doors regardless if it happened or not. Bret Hart still would have been losing money potentially because WCW was being mismanaged at that point. They were already going downhill. WWE was beating the crap out of them in the Monday Night Wars. If the kick had never happened, his career still would have been taken away. Number two, I want to point something out that I think that Conan was on to something. Goldberg was rushed through the power plant. They saw the guy's intensity. They saw his strength. They saw that he had the intense look. And they wanted to capitalize off that by rushing his training and putting him in the ring, having him go out there and squash people, not build up enough experience in the ring to keep his opponent safe. That was what I think played a part in all this. Not really that Bill Goldberg meant for it to happen, but lack of experience came back and played a part. And Bret Hart, I will say that I do think that he needs to look at things differently rather than come at Goldberg for a kick that he cannot go back and undo. He's been vocal about the way WCW was managed. He's even called out Vince Russo before, because we know Russo, after the kick to the head, Vince Russo was still booking Bret Hart in angles to where Bret was risking further injury despite the man was not 100%. They had Goldberg punch through limousine windows that were actually made of real hard, solid glass. Okay. The man got injured for months. He was out on the shelf for many, many months before coming back. And when he came back, WCW was even in worse shape. And they decided to go ahead and turn Goldberg heel. How that went, a month and a half in, they turned him right back to a babyface. You can look at it from a standpoint of somebody being sloppy in the ring, or you can look at it from the bigger picture that WCW fumbled with making Goldberg rush through the power plant and not gain the experience he needed. I don't think Bill Goldberg meant to injure him and permanently hurt him and cost him his career. There was no reported heat between the two before the whole thing happened. And it's well known that Bret Hart's head was not really in the right place as it was before that match even happened. He was still getting over a lot of crap. Stuff that nobody really can say that they would do differently if they were in his situation. You don't know what it was like to be humiliated by Vince McMahon, or losing a family member at a pay-per-view, or losing somebody you're married to and getting divorced. You can't say that you would not act the way Bret did. You can't say that because you were not in his situation. Everybody's different. And no matter what people can say at the end of the day, well, Bret Hart is bitter. Maybe he is. But if the guy could get over the Montreal screw job, he got over his personal grudge with Shawn Michaels, he forgave Vince McMahon, I definitely think he could try to forgive Bill Goldberg. I'm no Goldberg fan myself. I am not defending what happened. I'm just simply stating if Bret went through worse, why can't he let go of a lesser severe thing? And don't get me wrong, the kick to the head from Goldberg must have been painful. A guy like that's big and strong. If I've said this before, if Goldberg focused hard enough, he not only could end the person's career, he could end their life. That's how strong that guy was. You know, you wouldn't think it in professional wrestling, but if he ran full force at somebody with that spear, I definitely think he could end a person's life. That's how insanely strong he was. But again, if Bret went through worse, why can't he let go of his hatred of Goldberg? It's not like Bret actually lost his life. If anything, he should be grateful that he's still alive today. I mean, yeah, he probably still has problems. It's well known the man has health issues. He had a stroke. He had a concussion. I just think the guy needs to change his way of thinking. I'm a Bret Hart fan, one of the best of all time, but I do agree with some people out there. The man needs to tone it down. He doesn't have to like Bill Goldberg, but, you know, Bret took himself seriously as a role model. What does sending a message of negativity and bitterness teach your fan base at the end of the day? I don't know, guys. I mean, you can look at it a number of ways. I honestly think that Bret Hart needs to change his thinking around. I don't believe Bill Goldberg meant to hurt him permanently. And at the end of the day, maybe a positive result needs to happen. But I agree with Conan to an extent. Maybe in time, Bret Hart can find forgiveness. So I don't know how to look at it any further than that. I just think that this is a situation that Bret needs to change his thinking on. I think he needs to reach out to Goldberg and say, you know, I'm sorry for trashing you the way I have in interviews. I really don't believe Goldberg meant any real harm, guys. I think this whole thing was really just one man's frustration because his career got taken away. And I think it's just really something to where he needs to redirect his anger to something else. WCW could not be saved. He still would have lost his career if the kick happened or not. And that's what Bret needs to remember. Maybe if WCW was not managed by officials that obviously didn't know what they were doing half the time, this would have never happened. But that's just my take on it. What do you guys think? Tell me in the comments section down below. Hit the subscribe button if you're brand new to the channel. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and I'll talk to you later.